Alright, hi everyone. This is my third video. I'm reading the 8th part of The Color of Magic. There were more boots on a rack that hung in a small platform built on the side of the perch ring. Before Rincewind could stop him, the dragon rider had leapt from the creature's back to land on the platform, where he stood grinning at the wizard's discomfiture. There was a small expressive sound made by a number of crossbows being cocked. Rincewind looked up at a number of impassive, upside-down faces. The dragonfolk's taste in clothing didn't run to anything more imaginative than a leather harness studded with bronze ornaments. Knives and sword sheaths were worn inverted. Those who were not wearing helmets let their hair flow freely so that it moved like seaweed in the ventilation breeze near the roof. There were several women among them. The inversion did strange things to their anatomy. Rincewind stared. "Surrender," said Cassidra again. Rincewind opened his mouth to do so. Kring hummed a warning, and agonizing waves of pain shot up his arm. "Never," he squeaked. The pain stopped. Oh, God. Kring is going to make him do so many terrible things. "Of course he won't," boomed an expansive voice behind him. "He's a hero, isn't he?" Rincewind turned and looked to a pair of hairy nostrils. They belonged to a heavily built young man hanging nonchalantly from the ceiling by his boots. "What is your name, hero?" said the man, "so that we know who you were." Agony shot up Rincewind's arm. I'm Rincewind of Ankh," he managed to gasp, "and I am Leort, Dragon Lord." There's an exclamation point in the middle of that name," said the hanging man, pronouncing the word with the harsh click in the back of the throat that Rincewind could only think of as a kind of integral punctuation. "Oh! I don't even know how to do that. Like I can't do that. You have come to challenge me in mortal combat." Well, no, I didn't. You're mistaken. Consider help our hero into a pair of hook boots. I'm sure he's anxious to get started." No, look, I just came here to find my friends. I'm sure there's no," Rincewind began, as the dragon rider guided him firmly onto the platform, pushed him onto a seat, and proceeded to strap hook boots to his feet. "Hurry up, Cassidra. We mustn't keep our hero from his destiny," said Leord. "Look, I expect my friends are happy enough here, so if you could just, set me down somewhere." "You will see your friends soon enough," said the dragon lord airily. "If you are religious, I mean. None who enter the Wormburg ever leave again, except metaphorically, of course. Show him how to reach the rings, Cassidra." "Look what you got me into," Rincewind hissed. Kring vibrated in his hand. "Remember that I am a magic sword," it hummed. "How can I forget?" "Climb the ladder and grab a ring," said the dragon rider, "then bring your feet up until the hooks catch." He helped the protesting wizard climb until he was hanging upside down, robe tucked into his breeches, Kring dangling from one hand. At this angle, the dragonfolk looked reasonably bearable, but the dragons themselves, hanging from their perches, loomed over the scene like immense gargoyles. Their eyes glowed with interest. "Attention, please," said Leort. A dragon rider handed him a long shape wrapped in red silk. "We fight to the death," he said. "Yours. And I suppose I earn my freedom if I win?" said Rincewind without much hope. Leort indicated the assembled dragon riders with a tilt of his head. "Don't be naive," he said. Rincewind took a deep breath. "I suppose I should warn you," he said, his voice hardly quavering, "that this is a magic sword." Leort let the red silk wrapping drop away into the gloom and flourished a jet black blade. Runes glowed on its surface. "What a coincidence," he said, and lunged. Oh boy. Rincewind went frigid with fright, but his arm swung out as Kring shot forwards. The swords met in an explosion of octarine light. Leort swung himself backwards, his eyes narrowing. Kring leapt past his guard, and although the Dragonlord's sword jerked up to deflect most of its force, the result was a thin red line across its master's torso. With a growl, he launched himself at the wizard, boots clattering as he slid from ring to ring. The swords met again in another violent discharge of magic, and, at the same time, Leort brought his other hand down against Rincewind's hand, jarring him so hard that one foot jerked out of its ring and flailed desperately. Oh, Jesus Christ. Rincewind knew himself to be almost certainly the worst wizard on the Discworld since he knew but one spell, yet for all that he was still a wizard. And thus, by the inexorable laws of magic, this meant that upon his demise it would be Death himself who appeared to claim him, instead of sending one of his numerous servants as it usually is the case. Thus it was that, as a grinning Leort swung him, thus as it, I have messed this up. Thus it was that, as a grinning Leort swung back and brought his sword around in a lazy arc, time ran into treacle. To Rincewind's eyes, the world was suddenly lit by a flickering, octarine light, tinged with violet as photons impacted on the sudden magical aura. Inside, inside it, the Dragon Lord was a ghastly-hued statue, his sword moving at a snail's pace in the glow. Beside Liort was another figure, visible only to those who can see into the extra 4 dimensions of magic. It was tall and dark and thin, and against the sudden night of frosty stars, it swung two-handed a scythe of proverbial sharpness. What are you doing, Death? What are you doing? Rincewind ducked. That's weird because he's hanging upside down, so ducking would be he'd like curl up into himself. That's weird. The blade hissed coldly through the air beside his head and entered the rock of the cavern roof without slowing. Death screamed a curse in his cold, crypt voice. The scene vanished. What passed for reality on the Discworld reasserted itself with a rush of sound. Lyric gasped at the sudden turn of speed with which the wizard had dodged his killing stroke, and, with that desperation only available to the really terrified, Rincewind uncoiled like a snake and launched himself across the space between them. He locked both hands around the Dragon Lord's sword arm and wrenched. It was at that moment that Rincewind's one remaining ring, already overburdened, slid out of the rock with a nasty little metal sound. It was at that... What the hell? He plunged down, swung wildly, and ended up dangling over a bone-splintering Death with his hands gripping the Dragon Lord's arm so tightly that the man screamed. Liort looked up at his feet. Small flakes of rock were dropping out of the roof around the ring pythons. "Let go, damn you," he screamed, "or we'll both die." Rincewind said nothing. He was concentrating on maintaining his grip and keeping his mind closed to the pressing images of his fate on the rocks below. "Shoot him!" bellowed Liort. Out of the corner of his eye, Rincewind saw several crossbows leveled at him. Liort chose that moment to flail down with his free hand, and a fistful of rings stabbed into the wizard's fingers. To flail down with his free hand. What? And then it just says he let go. And then that's the end of my section. What the hell? Liort chose that moment to flail down with his free hand. His free hand, but isn't... How does he have a free hand? I don't understand that. And a fistful of rings stabbed into the wizard's fingers. How is that... What? Anyway, damn it, I don't understand.